Rob, we talked earlier about it with Ephraim Salam on Deion Sanders and his tenure at Colorado. Just 1 year, just one season. They finished the season 4-8, lose 8 of their last 9. Rob G, kind of give us a summary of where, what's happened with Deion there and where things stand now.
Well, you touched on it, Chris. It all started with a upset win over TCU that had Colorado and Deion Sanders really feeling themselves. If you recall, famously after that game, Ed Werder tried asking a question, and Deion Sanders said he couldn't ask a question because he didn't believe. He didn't believe in the offseason that Colorado was going to be here and that they weren't coming, that they were already here by now. So they started off the season 3-0, and everybody's feeling it. They're he's doing interviews on Barstool and ESPN and Undisputed every week, and then things kind of went.
Wayne had a concert.
Yeah, things kind of went sideways pretty quick. A
lot of shows went there. Yeah.
So you mentioned they lost 8 of their last 9, including 6 in a row. They went from being a dark horse national title contender to not even bowl eligible. And to make matters,
everybody thought they were going to the bowl when they were 3-0 and they need 6 wins.
They're like, this
everybody
is easy money.
Uncle,
they're going to be a bowl.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And things have kind of, I'm not going to say this is the worst part, but last week, Shedeur Sanders missed the game because he had a fracture in his back. We don't know what that might mean for his future going forward, either in the NFL or next season with Colorado. I imagine it's a small injury. But now it's boiling over to the recruiting space because they've had 2 recruits in the last 3 days decommit from Colorado and Deion Sanders.
Let's say this.
I'd heard
people
other
decommitting.
Numbers,
people decommitting is not like unheard of. Okay,
it's not unheard of.
It's not unheard of. You know what I mean? So let's not make it like, oh my God, they're fleeing from Deion. A lot of kids do it. A lot of kids.
Well, just Rob, to your point, that is true. It happens all the time, and this is very early in the process still. But just for some context, Colorado's 2024 recruiting class currently ranks 65th nationally. Wow. Only 3 spots ahead of Colorado State. They only have 9 commitments, just 3 of whom rank in the top 400 nationally.
Wow. Now
that surprises me.
Yeah, those are the ones.
That's the one, one of the things I think many of us expected from Deion is the recruiting.
Because of the high profile, Chris.
Right.
And
the profile, which leads to NIL.
All of the great guys, but Deion said, we ain't an ATM. If you come here to get rich, don't come and all that. His comments were not likable for the new college football player.
Yeah, what do you we asked Ephraim, I'll ask you, Rob. Do you think this season will go down as a success for Deion or a failure?
Okay. It's a good question. No, I'm here. I'm just trying to give it a fair answer.
Right.
Because I know where they came from. And I know they only have 1 win, so any kind of improvement, it's hard to call it. From 1 win to 4 wins, hard to call it up to 3 wins, right?
And while you think, let me clarify. I mean on the field. Because obviously, I don't think anyone could deny it's been a raging success off the field.
You know what I'm saying?
Like the money that school, Rob, that school has gotten more publicity than it's had since it won the national championship.
No doubt. And that's what I'm trying to be fair about, Chris.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to be fair about.
So off the field, obviously, a major success.
Okay, I'll say this.
On strictly football-wise.
Football, then it's a fail. And it's a fail because of where they started from. To be 3-0, to have those sites. When they lost to, Stanford? Remember that game?
They were up 29-0 at halftime.
That's the game that, to me, just said, like, something's wrong here. There's just no way you could lose possibly. Most people, and you know this, Chris, went to bed, woke up, and were absolutely stunned. Weren't you stunned when you woke up?
Stunned. I was one of them. I thought it was over.
Most people went to bed because it was 29-0 at the half or whatever. And not to be able to win 3 more games when everybody was so sky high, and you talked about it before, TCU, they weren't who we thought they were when they won that first game. That was a telltale sign that they were maybe we didn't know it at the time, Chris, but they were off to a bad year.
It wasn't like I didn't know, but I remember us talking about it and us just throwing it out there. Hey, we don't know what TCU is. Because last year, it's not like they're a perennial power, right? It's not like Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State. They get to the championship game, and the following year, even if they lost everybody as far as starters, they were going to be good, right? TCU was fluky last year. And so we were just like, well, we think they're good. They were ranked.
Right, we thought, right.
And it turns out they weren't very good.
No, and you can sugarcoat it any way you want. As I said, Chris, you would feel way better about the program if they started out 1-4 and then finished with 3. You know what I mean? Finished with 3 wins. And then they had 4 in the season.
I'm going to push back on you, Rob.
Okay.
Because when we talked about the Denver Broncos, and now they started 1-5, and now they've won 5 straight, and they're 6-5. And you're saying, you're saying, we're not going to give them credit for just being what we thought they were. Like if they had started 1-1, then they're 2-3, then they're 4-2, and then they're 6-5. That's just you think, what? This is about what we expected from them. It wouldn't be a big deal. So I'm going to say with Colorado, Rob, to your point, if they say they lost to TCU, they start 1-2, then they're 1-4, but then they end up being 3-6, and they end up 4-8. I think people would have looked at that and said, hey, they came from 1 win a year ago. They had about 60 new players. This is Deion's first season coaching at the Division I, top level. I think people will look at that as a success. So I'm going to say, if you're saying it for Denver, that we're just going to judge them by where they were supposed to be, regardless how they got there, why not say that about Colorado?
Because Denver had a team with a top 10 defense. They should have never been as bad as we saw, where Colorado
should have never been as good.
Nah, but when you start
Nobody
off
3-0.
When you start 3-0, you change expectations. There's no way, Chris, when they were 3-0, that you thought they weren't going to win another game, and I know that they won one more, but there's no way you looked at them and went, okay, season's over. Yeah, they won 3 games. I only expected them to win 2 because of that. When they win 3 games, including a team that was in a national championship game, expectations change. And I'm not saying that they were supposed to win out or win 10 games or anything like that, but the embarrassing losses that they had and the way they played, that's what makes you feel like it fell it fell apart. It fell apart.
Okay, you say embarrassing losses. They lost to USC by a touchdown.
Yeah, but that game was way, and USC, Chris, lost his last 5.
No, so I know.
USC's not as good as
I'm
we
gonna
thought
tell you
they
this.
were.
I'd rather I shouldn't say I'd rather be. You'd rather be USC, even if it's 7-5. But I think Colorado had a more successful season than USC. Because Colorado improved, 3 games from last year. USC went backwards and was a team that many thought might be able to get to the playoff. Right.
It was a
disaster.
I'm saying,
you saying embarrassing losses. Oregon was embarrassing, 42-6. USC, they lose by a touchdown. Beat Arizona State. Stanford, embarrassing because they were up 29 to 0 at half. But UCLA, which was ranked, they lost to them by 2 touchdowns. Oregon State, they lost to, which is ranked 16th. They lost to them by 7. Arizona was number 21. They lost to them by a field goal. Now, Washington State blasted them. And Utah, which had been a good team, beat them by 6. So I'm just saying, they only had a couple of embarrassing losses, which if you're a bad or middling team, you're going to have a few embarrassing losses in college football. And so I think I get what you're saying in terms of once they started 3-0, everybody was excited about them.
Expectations changed. That's all.
Right. But I'm going to say if you step back and you look at where they came from and what they were supposed to be, even though it ended ugly. And again, some of those games were close. I think it was a success. Not as much as they wanted, not as much as probably most fans wanted, to be honest. Just not even Colorado fans, but a lot of us thought, oh, this is exciting. This is fun. But I think overall it was a success. And now, Rob, I'll say this. Now is where the really hard work begins. I'm not saying it wasn't hard for them to get their team together this year. But now, Rob, now there are expectations, right? Like this year, there were no expectations. Now there will be expectations. Now when you lose, there will be criticism. You won't be, if you're not great, you're not going to be the it team. Shows aren't going to go to Colorado to do their shows from your campus if you're not great. We already saw, Rob G talked about their recruiting class. That's, to me, that's a failure. If their recruiting class is 65th, you got one of the best football players ever recruiting. You got all of that publicity, all of that pomp and circumstance, all the celebrities on the sidelines, and you can't do better than, the 65th recruiting class in the country. So now is where the hard work begins.
But see, the only problem,
that's
Chris,
what I'm looking at for them.
Is I hear that with Deion and all that, but when you don't win, nobody cares about that. Like, that's the part. Like, do I want to go to a program that won one game last year, the year before, and then started out 3-0, and then lost some of these games? And you're right. Okay, some of them were embarrassing, some weren't, but they lost all these games at the end. People went from droves and concerts and celebrities walking the sidelines to nobody showing up and nobody heading there. Do I really want to be a part of that? Do I really want, you know what I mean? Like, is this going to fall apart? And I'm sure the recruiters, Chris, are saying, you sure you want to go there? Did you see what happened when they played Stanford? Stanford's not even a good football team. They got, whatever it is, they'll use it as ammo against them.
That's the thing. He has to be able to counter that. And I don't think that should be that hard because obviously they're rebuilding. He got a couple of people to go to Jackson State.
Oh, no doubt. I mean,
so
there's no. I'm not saying he's not going to get
He's
anybody.
obviously got to get linemen though. That's their big problem. Is the line on both sides of the field, and so it'll be interesting. And as you and Rob G pointed out, Rob, the trash talking just does make it more.
It hurts,
right? And a lot of people love it, right? A lot of people
because after week one, you're telling people you got receipts and all this, and we got the video of you. They making it personal, right?
All we wanted to do was play a football game. Now they making it, like all that.
You got all. I
mean, they were strutting. Right? And now you got, a little humble pie. And that's why I said the hard work begins now.